Let's talk about what it means to be bossy. My friend Aisha has reclaimed the word bossy on her journey to empowering women. As so many things in society are telling people they are not enough, Aisha's company is saying something different. That's one of the many reasons I was excited that she agreed to come on the podcast. I hope you enjoy this episode. Today I'm joined by my friend Aisha from Bossy Cosmetics. Aisha, I always like to start with people introducing themselves, so can you introduce yourselves to the people listening?
Hi, as you said, my name is Aisha, but I always like to start with my full name. My full name is Aishatu Fatima Dozier. I'm a daughter, I'm a mom, I'm a sister, I'm a wife, I'm a friend, and I'm the founder of Bossy Cosmetics. I was an investment banker before I started this beautiful entrepreneurial journey. And I often tell people that about 7, 8 years ago, spectacularly burned out and left my career as an investment banker. And I took a year off and started this journey of really trying to empower women who identify as ambitious to live their biggest, fullest, most beautiful lives, to look good, to feel good, and to do good in the world. And so that's what I'm doing every single day, in addition to raising three amazing young boys and myself trying to remain empowered and build something of my life that hopefully in 40 years I can look back and be proud of.
That's really awesome to hear. I also like to make sure that people understand how I know all of the guests that I've had on the podcast. So why don't we start with your perspective? How do we know each other?
So we know each other because we were in the same section at the Harvard Business School. And I have to say, even saying that 20 some odd years later is crazy because you were and still are, you were like a really typical HBS guy. Like
What?
you worked at, yeah, you worked at the top consulting firm and you kind of knew all the business terms and all that stuff. And I worked in finance, yes, which
Sorry,
seems
where,
typical,
sorry,
but I
where,
was
where
on,
were you in finance?
yeah, I was at Goldman Sachs.
Okay, so let's not throw stones here. But that's right. We
But
do know each other from
I would say
section.
you were more typical than I was, Keith.
I will own that and admit that it's
Okay.
true. And I will say, we were laughing before I started the recorder about Bossy, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But I will say that when I met you, I was like, wow, she really has an opinion on what she's going to say. Because for those listening who don't know, HBS classes are basically big discussions slash debates. You sort of state your opinion and then you back it up, and the discussion goes from there. And I remember thinking, I think she's 2 years out of undergrad and she is going toe to toe with everybody in the room.
Yeah, I'm a spark plug, and I think I was that way from like the minute I came to this earth. I have always had a firm opinion. The good thing is that I don't hold my opinion so tightly. I'm willing to hear a superior argument and then move. But if I don't have a superior argument, I am going to get to the bottom of my point. And the one thing I've always held dear is my voice. Like I will not let anyone silence it. And I think using the word bossy for me was something that I was called, and not in a positive way, but I just decided to flip it when I was starting my company and make it positive.
Aisha, I want to talk about the business a little bit and what's special about being bossy, but I want to start with your introduction to the cosmetic space. What was your first taste, and did you have people around you that were really into it, or was it something you just stumbled into?
Thanks for asking. What I didn't mention, when I talked about who I am, is that I'm a first generation American citizen. So I was born to parents that were born and raised in Nigeria. And part of our culture in Nigeria, particularly Nigerian women, is just this colorful beautification process. Like it's just part of the culture for the average Nigerian woman. And so my mom and my grandmother were, very typical Nigerian women in that they were always, if they had somewhere nice to go, they were very well dressed,
Mm-hmm.
took a lot of care around how they looked and makeup. My mother, who raised me as a single mom, worked at Neiman Marcus for a period of time. And I just used to love going into such a fancy store in
Right.
Boston, and I would love going in there and just, it just seemed like only rich people could go in there and looking at makeup and these women wearing pink lipsticks and all of this stuff. And it just, in my head, was the association with putting yourself together from your clothing, your hair, your accessories, your makeup is really how you show up in the world. And I took that on as a very young girl. My mother told me it was important. Even my grandmother told me it was important. And she wasn't using sophisticated cosmetics. She was using a lot more local cosmetic like
Right.
talcum powder. But it was still part of the process. You take a shower, you put your powder on your face.
And so they said it was very important. Does that mean they let you wear cosmetics as a young girl?
Absolutely not. My mother was so strict. I could not paint my nails. I think I could do Vaseline on my lips. That was as far as I could go. I could not perm my hair. I mean, it was insane in my house. She was super strict until I went off to college.
Which is basically when you were on your own and could do what you wanted, and then you could clean it up before you came home for the holidays.
Exactly.
So let me ask you, when did you decide that this was where you belonged and take the leap? I mean, you've had a long corporate career and I'm sure had a long runway there into retirement if you chose to do that path, but you chose a different path, which is something not a lot of people do. How did you decide it was time to take the leap?
You are very right that I could have, when I first started in investment banking out of undergrad when we met, and I worked for 3 years, not two. I worked for 3 years at Goldman Sachs. But, when I went to HBS, I thought, okay, I'm going to come out and follow my passion. And as you recall, in the early
Yep.
2000s, the dot-com bust, the world was melting. It was not the time to follow passions. So I did something really wild and went to work at Morgan Stanley. Woohoo!
Right. Big change.
Big change, doing the exact same job I did before, but I always played it safe. And then, fast forward 20 years, I was still playing it safe, albeit just not as broke as I was before, not broke at all. So I had gone from changed, the level of privilege and then could make a lot of different decisions.
Hmm.
And one of the biggest things that happened across that 2 decade career was getting married, having 3 children, and just really coming to the realization that I didn't love what I was doing
Right.
and I didn't want to stay in it till retirement. That idea, that notion of being an investment banker, a financier forever, just made me sad. And so the best awful thing happened to me, which was that I was diagnosed with severe hypertension. And my
Mm.
doctor told me that I needed to make some significant lifestyle changes so that I could be around to raise my kids. And, I say it's the best bad news because I immediately was like, okay, I'm leaving. So I took a year off,
Hmm.
did a fellowship at Stanford, which is what led me to Palo Alto, California, where we live now. And I decided that I would try to pursue or build a career in something without being driven entirely by money.
Hmm.
Now, as I said before, I was raised by a single mom, very, very kind of not impressive background, borrowed to go to undergrad, borrowed to go to business school, as most people do, but worked to pay off all my loans. But I was in a very different position 20 years later that I
Right.
could, make this call. And so I decided to do something that I thought would be my passion and that I was always really excited about, which was cosmetics. I have always loved fashion and beauty and just from a personal standpoint. But prior to starting this company, I thought you work really hard so that you can make money to buy those things.
Right. And
And
then here
so
we are on the other side. You're not exactly buying them. So let me ask you, how did you decide it was time to start a company? Did you spend a good chunk of that year building out a business plan and building out a business case and deciding how to get into fashion or cosmetics or the industry?
that is what the typical Harvard Business School graduate would do. That is not what I did. I spent 1 year at Stanford hanging out with a bunch of undergrads who were at the design school. And I was just in love with the IDEO design thinking process and analogous explorations and just standing on the street asking random people about empathy driven questions. I did not plan this at all. I think 3 days before I graduated, it came to me. I think I want to do this. I want to start a beauty company that really targets women who self identify as being ambitious and sells them beauty products, but really is about women's empowerment, just masquerades as a beauty company. And I think the next day I incorporated the company. There was no feasibility study. I did not call Bain. I did not call McKinsey. I did no feasibility analysis. I did no work. I just started the business.
Aisha, you alluded to it a little bit earlier, And I want to come back to Bossy. And I want to talk about what's special about Bossy Cosmetics. And the first thing I want to discuss is the name itself. Hearing you talk about it when we were preparing for this helped me understand the name is special just on its own. And so I want to talk about what Bossy means in your context and in the context of the business.
Yeah, so I think ask any outspoken woman anywhere, any culture, any planet. Well, I don't know about other planets, but let's say any country. If she's outspoken, has a voice, really wants her opinion to be taken, she has been called bossy at some point in her life.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that when a woman or a girl or a young lady is articulating herself and that she could be called bossy or annoying or aggressive versus if a boy or young man did exactly the same thing, he would be called a natural leader, he would be called
Mm-hmm.
assertive. There would be all of these very positive adjectives for the boy, but very negative. She's pushy, she's annoying, she's emotional, she's bossy. And as one can imagine, I have been called bossy many times in my life.
Maybe. Maybe.
And I decided initially, I think when I was much younger, I found it as something that I needed to improve upon. It was when I got older that I realized that spark in me was something that I really needed to focus on
Mm-hmm.
and to nurture. And so I always played with, yeah, I'm bossy, but I flipped the meaning. And when I decided to start the company, I didn't even think about it. The name bossy just came to mind. And it's been a word that has resonated with so many women because there was a challenge to cancel the word bossy,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of people understand the tongue-in-cheek nature of using that word
Mm-hmm.
and how we can reclaim it for ourselves.
It is interesting because I see a lot of people today, they'll talk on social media about being like a boss. Oh, you handle that like a
Mm-hmm.
boss. And I'm like, what exactly does
Mm-hmm.
that mean? I mean, it means not only are you in charge, but you have vision, that you think about leading the team, that you think about all the things
Mm-hmm.
that come with being a good boss. But that's
Uh-huh.
never the
Uh-huh.
context that I hear it when I hear people referring to women as bossy.
Of course, right? That's the thing, right? Like, I mean, that's just it. It's the world we live in. Misogyny is a thing. And I think, as a working woman myself, all of us women and men, quite frankly, we need allies in the arena to help us and for us to constantly speak out about these things because oftentimes they are internalized forms of discrimination that we ourselves as women hold, we don't realize, or a man has it,
Mm-hmm.
but he doesn't understand that that's happening. So putting a name to it and kind of bringing it out in the open helps everyone understand their biases.
It's really interesting. It just occurred to me as you were describing that I've talked with a lot of my queer friends and how they reclaim that word and use it,
Yeah,
and they've sort of adopted it as no, it's not a derogatory or it's a word, it's not a slur anymore. It's how we're going to talk
yeah.
about ourselves, and it feels a little bit analogous to what you're doing with Bossy.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, I remember watching a clip. I think it's Ta-Nehisi Coates who said his wife and her friends would sit down together and call each other the B word, and they would laugh. But he can't rock up there and be like, "Hey, B," it doesn't work that
That
way.
would not end well for him.
That would not end well. So
So
something similar.
I think it's really interesting that you're reclaiming the word and making the name and the word Bossy itself special. One of the other things that you mentioned when we were talking about this was the word confidence, and that it's a special part of the journey for you, a special part of what it is that you're trying to do, both the decision to leave banking and the purpose of the brand. You shared that with me, and I want others to hear how you think about it because confidence is something that people talk about a lot. Some people have irrational confidence, but you were talking about something that ran a lot deeper. And I wanted to capture it when we talked about it before. So I'm going to try it again and ask you here because confidence is certainly a special part of Bossy Cosmetics.
Yeah, so I have to say, I am a lifelong sufferer of imposter syndrome. I have these moments where I feel super confident, and then I have other moments where I'm just in complete self-doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the saying, new levels, new devils, right? When you climb up the ladder, you get to the next rung. You know you did everything to get to the next rung, but something in there is like, are you sure? Can you handle it? Do you deserve it? Are
Mm-hmm.
you worthy? All of those things. So that's something that I've struggled with forever. And I know that the biggest problem there, the gap there is confidence. It's a confidence gap,
Hmm.
right? And the people who have irrational confidence, I'm in envy of them. I mean, to wake up every morning and just believe you are Superman and can do absolutely everything you put your mind to, I wish I had that kind of confidence. But in the event that many of us, specifically women, and this is well documented, we often deal with, one of the biggest parts of this brand is confidence hacking, is how do we get you to feel like you can do the challenge in front of you? And so we deal with a lot of affirmations on our packaging. We have affirmations like you are beautiful, you are enough, where beauty meets
Hmm.
ambition. Our product names are determined, ambitious, outspoken, empowered. Everything about the collections that we produce are just about affirming women that we need to go out there, we have what it takes, and we should just go for the most that we can and that we want.
And as you talk about confidence and empowering women, there's this notion of putting on the makeup and the ritual that comes with that and getting ready to tackle the
Hmm.
world. I wanted to talk about that a
Hmm.
little bit because when we were preparing, you actually talked and used terms that I had never heard people refer to it, war paint and battle gear and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
things like that. What does that mean in this context?
So the first thing I want to say is I want to be careful when I use the term war paint. I'm very clear about not appropriating indigenous cultures or native cultures, what they mean by war paint. And I'm holding, you can't, I mean, this isn't a visual discussion, but I'm holding our packaging and it says on it, may this beautiful lipstick color serve as war paint and help you to surpass every goal that you've set for yourself and more.
Wow.
And this color itself is called sophisticated. So, what we want is for you to feel so almost enveloped by the product where you see it, the packaging is beautiful, it's fancy. And then there's this affirmation that as you're putting it on, right? Because war paint, you literally are painting yourself, right? Going through that ritual of putting your face on or this mask, whatever it is, and that process, we wanted to help you build your confidence so that once the face is on, once the war paint is on, once that mask is on, you feel how you need to feel so that you can achieve your goals.
It's really interesting. As you're describing that, I'm thinking about a podcast guest that we have on, Master Ace, and he has a song called Enough. And the whole
Okay.
song, it's basically line by line thinking about all the things that may not be good enough. And he's asking sort of, what if
Mm.
this isn't good enough? What if I'm not good enough? What if this part of me isn't good enough? And that's the whole song. And it's just questioning that confidence and that lack of confidence. And he's 30, 40 years into the game, probably 30 years in when he wrote that. But what's
Uh,
interesting is when he talked about getting ready to be on stage as his home, he talked about how he thinks about putting on his gear because he used to play football in high school. And he sort of talked
mm,
about it as game day and putting on the uniform and
mm.
getting ready for the performance. And it's very similar to how you're describing the ritual of putting on
Yeah,
makeup before the meeting or putting on makeup before you go into work or leave the house.
absolutely. Putting on the makeup, depending on how dressy I need to be, putting on the battle gear for me in my case, my clothing, my
Mhm.
accessories, all of that is my transformation process. But the most important thing is the Aisha that's within, right? Because if the Aisha that's within isn't feeling, then it really doesn't matter how she
Right,
looks.
right.
And that's why our mission statement is empowering women to look, feel, and do good. Those three things are absolutely important. If you want to look good, you've got to feel good so that you can do good.
That is a great segue into what I was going to ask you about as our last thing being special about Bossy was the mission. And you talked about what the mission is, but I want to get into that a little bit more because some people will take parts of the cosmetics industry as a whole and sort of treat it as a niche and put it in a box. And you're doing something different with your brand and what it is that you're trying to do. You're not just trying to tell people this is a cool color and it'll look great on you. It's actually you are great and this color
Yeah.
will help you manifest that.
Yes, exactly. And you are great whether you wear this color or not. I think that's a very important point here is, I often tell people we are a women's empowerment, mission-driven company that masquerades as a beauty brand. We make money from selling beauty products, which is great. Buy them, please. But My first thing is that women just show up, go be the CEO, go be the whatever. Like you have choice, go be the president, go be whatever it is that you set your heart to, or maybe don't work. Whatever it is, I want women to have choice and to be very comfortable in that choice and to never feel like there's something that we can't do. That's more important to me than you wearing my cosmetics.
And how are you finding that niche in an industry that almost plays to people's insecurities as their marketing pitch, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you're not
Yeah,
doing that at all. You're doing the opposite of that.
yeah. Thank you for asking that question because you are definitely swimming upstream. And this is and this is your, not only upstream, but just imagine the ocean is moving in one direction and you're going in another direction, being the just the scale
Hmm.
of the competitors and the competitive landscape and the way the zeitgeist moves. But, I did not want to just create another red lipstick. That would not be exciting to me, right? Because I'd already done that. I'd worked at Goldman Sachs, worked at Morgan Stanley, worked at Lehman Brothers. I did all the things that one is supposed to. I went to Harvard Business School. Like I did all the things. This is not that. This is 20 some odd years into working. There's a very deep perspective that I have developed alongside having met thousands of women and just really understood what it's like to be a woman working in the US, in Africa, in Europe, in the UK, in Asia, and in South America. These are all markets that I have work experience, and just realizing that there's something that is a through line across womanhood in all of these different cultures and jurisdictions, and that's what I wanted to focus on. And so I think it's harder to do, but I'm fortunate in that I don't have venture capital investors who are asking me to grow 50% every other minute. So I
Hmm.
can take my time. I look at it as the long game,
Hmm.
of really trying to articulate the point of differentiation of the brand and build the brand just woman by woman by woman. So it's not easy, but that's what you do when you're passionate about something.
It is interesting. I often tell my team at work that I want them thinking about building pyramids, not fancy sandcastles. Yeah,
Ah,
I
there you
I
go.
want it
And those
here.
pyramids last
They
centuries.
last centuries. The sandcastle will look really great until the tide comes in, and then we're starting over
Yep.
again from scratch tomorrow. Aisha, I wanted to wrap up by just giving people who are listening to this going, wait, where can I find this? What should people be doing to get more involved and engaged with the brand? Tell us where to
Oh,
find
they
it.
should. You can find us on Instagram, Bossy Beauty. You can find us online, bossybeauty.com. You can find us at Nordstrom. You can find us at JCPenney. You can find us on Amazon. So pretty much a billion different spots you can find us.
That's really awesome. I want to thank you for coming on today and sharing a little bit about your special home being bossy, not just talking about the word and the brand, but how you're on a mission and how you're inspiring confidence in women everywhere, whether they're heavy users of your products or not even users of your product. It's about something bigger than that. And I just really appreciate you taking the time in between trips and juggling household responsibilities with those boys to come on and spend a little bit of time talking with us.
Absolutely, Keith. First of all, it's an honor to have been asked. I'm very excited to be on your podcast. I think you've had such an amazing career, and I just love what you're doing, and I'm happy to be a part of it. So thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of My Home is Special. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get future episodes automatically. You can go to myhomeisspecial.com to see the full project and sign up for email updates. Be sure to follow KBev Photo on Instagram or go to kbevphoto.com to see what I'm snapping these days. There's a lot on both to explore. For now, this is Keith, aka KBev, signing off. Peace.